January 3, 2026. Venezuela falls. Maduro sits in a Brooklyn cell. But the story doesn't end there. In fact, it's just beginning. Because Venezuela was a test case, and it passed. Now the question becomes, who's next? In the last 72 hours alone, the Trump administration has threatened 7 different countries. 7. From Venezuela to Greenland, Iran to Cuba. Each one with a different excuse, but all with the same strategy. Today, we're breaking down each target, one by one. Their threat levels, their likelihood of being hit, and most importantly, when, if ever, this will stop. Because if no one's stopping it, this list will keep growing. Welcome to Powder Keg. Let's dive in. Let's start with the most urgent. Iran. January 16, 2026, right now. The USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group is en route from the South China Sea to the Persian Gulf. Since December 28th, protests have been raging across Iran. Official death toll, 495. The Associated Press says it's over 2,000. And Trump? On January 2nd, he posted on Truth Social, "Locked and loaded." This isn't an empty threat. In June 2025, Trump ordered airstrikes on 3 Iranian nuclear facilities. No one expected it, no one intervened. And now, that same playbook is open again. On January 14th, personnel evacuations began from Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, the largest U.S. military installation in the Middle East. This isn't routine rotation, this is pre-strike positioning. Iran isn't silent either. Tehran has declared all U.S. bases are legitimate targets. The Revolutionary Guard is on high alert. Hezbollah in Lebanon, Houthis in Yemen, all proxies activated. Here's what makes this different from Venezuela. Iran has allies, Russia, China. A strike on Iran isn't a quick snatch and grab, it's a regional war. Oil prices would spike, global markets would crash, American troops would die. But Trump has already shown he doesn't need congressional approval. He didn't ask for it in Venezuela, he won't ask for it in Iran. Senator Rand Paul called it what it is. Bombing another nation's capital is an act of war, period. But Trump's position is clear. The War Powers Act is unconstitutional, which means he believes he can do whatever he wants. So what's the likelihood? Based on current military movements, intelligence assessments, and Trump's record book, 70% chance of a military strike within 90 days. The only question is, airstrikes only or boots on the ground? Now let's talk about something that sounds absurd until you realize it's deadly serious. Greenland. On January 12th, Trump declared, "We will get Greenland one way or another." Not "we'd like to negotiate," not "we're interested in purchasing." He said, "We will get it." That's the language of conquest. Denmark's response? Immediate. On January 14th, 6 NATO countries, Germany, Sweden, France, Norway, Netherlands, and Finland, deployed troops to Greenland in a show of solidarity. Denmark dusted off a 1952 royal decree that states any attack on Greenland will be met with immediate retaliation. Denmark is investing 88 billion kroner, that's $13.8 billion, into Greenland's defense. Here's where it gets historically unprecedented. NATO Article 5 states that an attack on one member is an attack on all, which means if Trump orders an invasion of Greenland, NATO countries would technically be obligated to defend Denmark against the United States. Senator Chris Murphy put it bluntly, "If I were a European NATO member, I would be reconsidering my participation in NATO if NATO countries are being invaded by Trump." Danish Prime Minister Frederiksen said this would mean the end of NATO. And she's right. The alliance has survived Russian aggression, Cold War tensions, terrorism, but it was never designed to handle one of its own founding members invading another. Trump's justification? He claims Greenland is undefended, calling their military presence 2 dog sleds. This is a lie. Greenland houses Thule Air Base, one of America's most strategic Arctic installations. The real reason? Rare earth minerals. Greenland sits on vast deposits of elements critical for smartphones, batteries, military tech, currently dominated by China. Trump wants those resources. Likelihood of military action? 40% within 1 year. Not because Trump won't try, but because NATO is actually pushing back. For now, Cuba. The 90-mile obsession. For 65 years, American administrations have tried to topple the Cuban government. Trump thinks he's found the key: Venezuela. Here's the strategy. It's actually elegant in its cruelty. Venezuela was Cuba's economic lifeline. Caracas sent Havana 100,000 barrels of oil per day. In exchange, Cuba sent doctors, teachers, intelligence officers. It was a socialist partnership that kept both regimes afloat. But on January 3rd, Trump didn't just invade Venezuela, he cut off that oil. Deliberately. Senator Lindsey Graham openly admitted, "I hope this spreads to Cuba." Secretary of State Marco Rubio, a Cuban-American hardliner, said, "We are not fans of the Cuban regime. That's not a secret." What does this mean in practice? Cuba's economy, already devastated by U.S. sanctions, is about to collapse. Power grids failing, food shortages worsening. In 2021, similar conditions sparked the largest protests since the revolution. This time, it could be regime ending, and that's exactly what Trump wants. In the Venezuela operation, 32 Cuban military officers were killed. That wasn't collateral damage, that was a message: your people aren't safe anymore. Trump is betting that economic starvation plus military intimidation equals revolution. The domino falls without a single American boot officially on Cuban soil. Likelihood? 50% regime crisis within 6 months, not because of invasion, but because of systematic economic strangulation. Mexico, America's neighbor, economic partner, USMCA trade agreement ally, and according to Trump, enemy territory controlled by drug cartels. His words, not ours. In December, Trump declared, "The cartels run Mexico. We will launch ground assaults to take them out." President Claudia Sheinbaum responded immediately, "We reject any interventionist intent whatsoever." This isn't hypothetical. Trump has been threatening military action inside Mexico since his first campaign. The difference now? He's actually doing it elsewhere. Venezuela proved he'll invade sovereign nations without congressional approval. Why would Mexico be different? The excuse is always the same: drugs, fentanyl, migrant caravans. But here's what's actually happening. Senator Josh Hawley, who voted against Trump on Venezuela, said something critical. Ground forces require congressional approval. He drew a line. Airstrikes, maybe. Boots on the ground, no. But Trump has already said the War Powers Act is unconstitutional, which means he doesn't recognize that line. The USMCA trade deal comes up for review in 2026. Trump is using tariff threats as leverage. But if economic pressure doesn't work, he's already shown he'll escalate to military pressure. President Sheinbaum is not Maduro. Mexico is not Venezuela. An invasion of Mexico would trigger a hemispheric crisis, economic catastrophe, and potentially armed resistance from a nation of 130 million people. But rational thinking hasn't stopped Trump before. Likelihood of military action? 35% within 1 year. Covert special operations? Higher. And then there's everyone else. Panama, Colombia, Syria, each with different reasons, all on the same list. Panama, Trump wants our canal back. Never mind that the U.S. voluntarily transferred it in 1999 under treaty. Never mind that 40% of U.S. trade passes through it. Trump claims China has too much influence. Rubio just visited with demands to reduce Chinese presence. The threat is economic for now, but the 1989 precedent looms large. That's when George H.W. Bush invaded Panama to arrest Manuel Noriega. Trump loves precedents. Colombia, President Gustavo Petro, a former leftist guerrilla, is everything Trump hates. Trump called him the cocaine-making sick man. When asked about invading Colombia, Trump responded, "Sounds good to me." The U.S. just cut $400 million in aid. Colombia's elections are in May 2026. Expect interference. Syria, This one's already happening. After 2 U.S. soldiers were killed in December, Trump ordered massive airstrikes. ISIS targets, he said. But it's also about Iran. Every Syrian strike is a message to Tehran. We're already there, and we're not leaving. And don't forget Nigeria, hit on Christmas Day. Trump will bomb anywhere, anytime, for any reason, or no reason at all. What connects all these countries? Resources, strategic positions, and leaders who said no to Trump. Venezuela had oil. Iran has uranium. Greenland has rare earth minerals. Panama has the Canal. Mexico has, well, Trump just doesn't like Mexico. This isn't about democracy. It's not about freedom. It's not even about national security. It's about power. And the question remains, who's next? So let's review. 7 countries, 7 threats, all in 72 hours. Venezuela, invaded. Iran, locked and loaded. Greenland, NATO crisis. Cuba, economic strangulation. Mexico, border threats. Panama, Canal demands. Colombia, regime change incoming. Syria, already bombing. Nigeria, hit. And here's the pattern. Trump threatens, tests the waters, waits for pushback. If there's resistance, he escalates. If there's silence, he acts. Venezuela was the test. No real consequences. Congress voted against him 52-47. He ignored them. European allies condemned it. He doesn't care. International law was violated. So what? The question isn't whether Trump will hit another country. Based on current trajectory, he will. The question is which one and when. Iran looks imminent. That carrier group isn't sailing for tourism. Cuba is collapsing by design. Greenland depends on whether NATO holds the line. Mexico is one cartel attack away from retaliation. Trump's former advisor Steve Bannon once said, "The way to deal with authoritarians is to be an authoritarian." And that's exactly what's happening. To defeat dictators abroad, Trump is becoming one at home. To spread democracy, he's abandoning it here. To protect American values, he's destroying them. Venezuela wasn't an anomaly. It was a template, and unless someone stops this, Congress, the courts, NATO, or the American people themselves, this list will keep growing. Because in the Donroe Doctrine, everything is America's. The oil, the minerals, the canals, the sovereignty. Everything. Welcome to the New World Order, where the rules don't matter, where allies are threats, where invasions are law enforcement operations, and where the only question left is who's next.